We were three, my sister, my brother, and me. My brothers passed through the western gate. My sister and I are left to wonder at fate. My heart will always be three, my sister, my brother, and me. Hi, this is Dottie the Psychic, and this episode is about Reuben Sayre. If you knew him, this is a chance to celebrate a short life lived well by an interesting character. If you didn't know him, then I'm truly sorry that you don't even know what you missed. On January 9th, 2019, at 11:51 p.m., Reuben Sayre died when he hit a patch of black ice on a bad road and flipped his truck. He was one of those people that was always brought the party and the booze, but he was sober that night. He was always ready to lend a hand, pour a drink, or crack a joke. There's no way I'm going to be able to tell all of his stories. Some of them the statutes of limitations haven't run out on. As Reuben's eldest sister, I have had the privilege of wiping his rear end when he was a baby. And I can tell you, from the day that Mommy and Daddy brought him home from the hospital to his very last, he kept that same loud personality. In this picture, I think he's actually about 13, but in the story, he was actually like 7. And Connor is 2. Connor had just gotten his first wooden sword, and he was very proud of it, and he showed it off to Reuben. And so Reuben decided to teach him how to be a proper pirate by screaming, "Arr!" and knocking the heads off of dandelions. Apparently Connor still has the sword. That's him in the brown. Chivalry was part of how we grew up. We were raised, along with a whole bunch of other people, in a group called the SEA. They're not sponsoring this video, but they were an integral part of who we are. It's like the Middle Ages, except with antibiotics and bathing, or a Renaissance fair without the tourists. His first award in the group was a silver buckle, and it's literally a buckle taken from the boot of a knight and given to children who have helped with the kingdom. And he was like 7. I know my sister got one and she was 10 and I was 14. So my brother and sister and I were called into the court, and we didn't know what to think because, the only thing we knew was that Dad didn't really particularly like it. And the funny thing is that we were actually called out of the kitchen to get an award for being in the kitchen, which seemed to be a theme for my brother. Spoon in hand and smirk on his face. It wasn't on purpose. He just liked food and he liked helping people. One of the best stories I heard about him was one time his buddy hit a deer in the middle of the night. And the buddy called a couple other people to help with the car. But then he called Reuben to help with the dead deer. In West Virginia, you're allowed to keep your roadkill. So they stayed up all night processing this thing till they were sleepy and silly from lack of sleep. Gods love him. You can't talk about my brother without talking about the spirits. Yes, he was an ordained minister and a deeply spiritual man. But those aren't the kind of spirits I'm talking about. The man could pour a fine drink. But you had to tell him how drunk you were willing to get before he poured it. There's just no way to compile the entire saga of Reuben, his band of merry guinea pigs, and the drink. So I'll stick to the one that Missy told me about trying to pick him up from the bar. He didn't want to be a burden on her, especially considering she was very pregnant at the time. But apparently he was way too drunk to drive. So he calls her and asks her to pick his drunk ass up. She tells him to stop where he was, and her and her husband, Muskie, would come and get him. Because he'd said something about being on his way, she was looking for his truck or him while they were driving. The truck is at the bar. Reuben is not. I think she said about this time she gets a call from him at the house. He had walked 3/4 of the way and had managed to get a ride for the last quarter, so they probably passed him. By the time she gets home and settles him in, he is cuddling the bucket that she had already cleaned vomit out of once. Apparently, he held the poor bucket all night long. So I wanted you to make sure that I brought up the fact the man was absolutely fearless. If he didn't know it, then YouTube did. And that went from everything from potentially toxic herbs to a Kia that sat in Mom's yard for we don't remember how long. But if he couldn't fix it, there was no question about whether it was fixable. Love you, Bubby. So, what can I say about my baby brother? This is the kind of crap he let me do to him. This is totally a cast of his face. We're doing this thing, and I talked him into letting me do a cast of his face, and then I filled it up with red wax, and tried to pawn it off on him for years, but he never would take it. I'll never forget his generosity and how he didn't make me feel weird, even though I'm kind of weird. I'm okay with that now, but haven't always been that okay with it, but he never made it an issue. One time, right after I left my husband, I was wearing some old shoes, and we were in Walmart together for some reason, and they were hurting. So I'm like, I complained about my shoes. So he stopped and he bought me a pair of shoes. And not only that, but the next time I went up there, he says, "Come on, Dot, we're going." And he takes me up to I think it's a Rocky Outlet. I can't even remember where it was. He took me up there, and he dropped probably $120 on just a couple pair of new shoes for me. And there was no way I could have paid him back at the time. And he told me not to worry about it. He said, "Dottie, don't worry about it. You need good shoes." And that was just kind of the way he was. So, I talk like my sister and I were his only siblings, but he kind of gathered them as he went. So, I'd like to say thank you to the whole family. Truth is, if you're hurt right now, then you loved him. And I would wager he loved you. In the end, that's what makes family. If you have a picture or a story you'd like to share, or if I screwed yours up, feel free to leave a comment below. I don't know if anybody can ever fully describe the man that left a Reuben-sized hole in our hearts, but I hope people keep trying. Some people believe as long as someone remembers you, you still exist. I believe that he's always going to be a part of me. He'll always be my little bear watching, magic card playing, angsty teen, kind, honest little brother. Love you, Bubby. Safe travel and much profit to you.
Up and down the